On the 25th of March, 2021, a person named Yellow Skarmory uploaded a video to the Red Ball Discord server that would change the game's speedrunning landscape forever. In the video, Skarmory is seen messing around in level 4 of the first installment in the Red Ball series. Skarmory ends up dying after touching this axe when, all of the sudden, the fanfare for the flag activation at the end of the level plays. Earlier, while he wasn't recording, Skarmory managed to make the sound play, but the 1.2 second long death counter sent him back to the checkpoint in the level, not yielding anything special. However, this time, Skarmory pauses the game for at least 2.8 seconds to allow the level end timer to play out, and upon unpausing, he is placed at the start of level 5. By dying at a seemingly random part in this axe in level 4, Skarmory had somehow activated the flag at the end of the level. With this news, a mad dash began to see who could improve the fastest completion of the level with the brand new strategy. Skarmory first attained an 11.667, beating his previous record of 11.806 by 4 frames. Speedrunner MotorJam then got an 11.581 and an unrecorded 11.323, and shortly thereafter, Caramel attained an 11.290. People still had no idea how this seemingly brand new strategy worked, but they had worked out what the general area was that the axe needed to be hit in order to successfully activate the flag at the end. The strategy wasn't too much faster than the previous fastest method of getting a back corner boost off of this falling platform, but that would all change as MotorJam figured out how to combine the back boost off of the platform and the new strategy to achieve a 9.677 in level 4, seemingly blowing all of the other runs out of the water. But what exactly had Skarmory discovered, and how did it work? As it turned out, this mystery was much deeper than it first appeared, and Skarmory had catalyzed something that would have massive implications on our understanding of Flash Player, individual level speedruns of the Red Ball games, and the quest to break the sub-3 barrier in the game. This is the story of how Red Ball's biggest mystery was finally solved. By the way, before we get started here, I just wanted to let you all know that I could have put a sponsored segment on this video, but I decided against it. So if you could consider leaving a subscription and a rating instead, that would be much appreciated. Now, on with the video. On the same day that Skarmory posted his revolutionary video, people still had no idea what was going on. Thankfully, as it turned out, we already had a few leads. People like myself, Roblox, and BNMC were quick to connect this to similar occurrences in other games in the Red Ball series, namely Red Ball 2 and Red and Blue Balls, which I will refer to as RAB for the rest of the video. In level 4 of RAB, speedrunners would randomly be able to collect this blue gem upon dying in these spikes, but it was pretty much useless and didn't save any time. However, in Red Ball 2, people were utilizing a mysterious checkpoint warp that occurred in level 13 of the game, shared with the community by speedrunner DHA on the 25th of September 2019, displayed with a video titled Wrong Warp. By dying on the left side of these spikes, Red Ball would activate the checkpoint present later in the level, which could be utilized to save some time. This was actually mentioned as being a part of the 6th tier of the Red Ball speedrunning iceberg, as I said the following in the second part of the video series on my channel. The reason that this is at the bottom of the iceberg is that we have no idea what causes this to happen. It's a complete anomaly. Nothing really stands out as being off in the code. If this checkpoint can be activated early, what if other checkpoints can be activated early as well? Will we find more instances of this by pure chance? Or will we be able to find other examples by cracking the code of the early activation in level 13? It's a deep rabbit hole that has everyone continually guessing. The thing about this checkpoint warp is that it was really easy to perform on accident. All that you had to do was die on the left half of some spikes for it to activate, unlike Red Ball 1 where the warp was much more precise and required the player to pause for at least 2.8 seconds to avoid being placed back at the checkpoint. Without a doubt, this checkpoint warp had been performed by hundreds of casual players since the game's release in 2009. This was a mystery that had spanned across 12 years, and nobody had ever managed to solve it. The related occurrences in Red Ball 1, Red Ball 2, and RAB all had one thing in common. Red Ball had to die in order for the glitch to work. Thus, the strategy became known as the Death Warp. And now, people were scrambling to try to figure out exactly why it worked to solve a mystery that had stayed with the game series for over a decade. You may be wondering what the red box on screen is. This box is displayed in a hack of Red Ball that has been created with knowledge that we now know about the Death Warp. Here in level 4 of Red Ball 1, you can see that when I die on the axe while in the correct position, the red box is overlapping the ending flag of the level as it ends up activating. In Red Ball 2 and RAB, it is pretty much the same story, with the box overlapping either a checkpoint or a gem when dying in the correct location. You see, people immediately began to theorize that this had something to do with Red Ball's current position becoming glitched upon dying. Now that we had multiple occurrences of a Death Warp happening, I tried overlaying level 4 of Red Ball and level 13 of Red Ball 2 in order to see if the warp was causing Red Ball to activate the flag at a fixed position away from the death point. It looked close on the x-axis, but the y-axis was completely off. Something else had to be at play. I had the idea to crack open the source code provided to the community by the game's creator, Eugene Fedosiv, to try to get some hard data as to what was going on. I recorded the X and Y position of Red Ball's bounding box as seen in the game's default 550 by 400 camera. The X position would always hover around 270, and the Y would always hover around 170, since the camera would constantly pan to keep Red Ball in the frame. Watching the values being printed in the console, I jumped into the axe in level 4, and boom. Red Ball's X and Y position were now completely different. The jump from roughly X270 to X770 looked familiar, as the death spot and the ending flag in level 4 were determined earlier to be roughly 500 units apart. With the default size of the game being 550 by 400, the game now thought that Red Ball was over 200 units off of the right side of the screen, exactly where the end flag was positioned. However, this jump in X and Y position was seemingly random. Dying in different positions on the map caused Red Ball's X and Y position to change by completely different amounts, and no mathematical relationship could be found. We would have to look a bit deeper if we wanted to fully solve this mystery. While Red Ball stays at around the same position in the game's camera, he also has an X and Y value in the entire loaded level object, relative to some origin point. I realized that, for whatever reason, when Red Ball died, the position of his bounding box was set to what his position in the entire level was. As mentioned earlier, the bounding box of Red Ball is determined relative to the game's camera, which is only 550 units wide by 400 units tall. So if Red Ball died at X position, say 773 in the whole level, the bounding box of Red Ball would be placed at X position 773 in the game's camera upon dying. If Red Ball's new bounding box and the flag now overlapped, it would activate, despite Red Ball not actually being visible there. We now knew exactly how Death Warp worked, but we still had no idea as to why. Discoveries like this had always been attributed to some sort of flash jankiness, but it still felt possible to figure out exactly what was going on. Thankfully, Red Ball technical expert Sage ended up cracking the code. The game of Red Ball is made up of a couple of key layers or elements that make death warping possible. Think of the stage as the default 550 by 400 region that the game displays at all times. The stage is like a camera that pans around the level as Red Ball moves to keep him in frame. In the game's hierarchy, the game is part of the stage, the current level is part of the game, and Red Ball is a part of the level. Thus, everything that Red Ball does is calculated as being a part of the current level that is loaded. When Red Ball dies, he is removed as being part of the level, which causes his sprite to no longer render. However, because Red Ball isn't fully removed, he still exists in a bit of a limbo state, not being a part of any layer of the game. So, Red Ball defaults to becoming a part of the stage, or camera, since it is the highest member of the aforementioned hierarchy. This is what causes Red Ball's position to now be set relative to the camera of the game upon dying. This is what allows for the Death Warp, as the dramatic change of coordinate system shifts the player's effective position very significantly. To apply our newfound knowledge to other levels, Sage had a genius idea. He figured out that by drawing a line between the origin of the level and the end flag, and then finding the midpoint, one could get a rough estimate for the spot that Red Ball would need to die at in order for a successful Death Warp. Another diagonal line would also need to be drawn from this midpoint to account for Red Ball not being positioned on the very top left corner of the camera, or its origin. Sage drew these lines on level 4, and it matched up flawlessly. Like a bunch of energetic toddlers, we began unboxing fresh packs of markers to draw all over each level in both Red Ball and Red Ball 2, in hopes of discovering new possible Death Warp spots. Unfortunately, we didn't end up finding anything new. Though a checkpoint warp in level 7 and an end flag warp in level 8 of Red Ball 1 seemed close, neither ended up working out in practice. Thankfully, the Death Warp in Red Ball 2 lined up perfectly with our model, confirming that the mechanism behind it and the warp in level 4 of Red Ball 1 were exactly the same. So, there you have it. The how and why of Death Warp fully explained. A glitch confirmed to be present in the games Red Ball 2, and RAB. Unfortunately, we did confirm that the glitch was not present in Red Ball 3 and onward due to Red Ball being more properly destroyed upon death. But some more applications would eventually be found. Speedrunner XDXbox Jaja managed to save around a second in level 16 of Red Ball 2 with a Death Warp from the toxic water. And people managed to Death Warp in level 9 of Red Ball 1 using a pretty much TAS-only plunger inversion. But this one didn't end up saving any time. When DHA first shared the mysterious checkpoint warp in level 13 of Red Ball 2, we first wrote it off as some sort of flash jankiness, a mystery that we couldn't solve. However, when Yellow Skarmory posted his video of the first ever Death Warp in level 4 of Red Ball 1, and we connected the dots between the two occurrences, we knew that something else had to be going on. The Red Ball 2 Death Warp was extremely easy to perform on accident, and had certainly happened to casual players for over a decade. Now, 12 years after the game's release, we know exactly why. Currently, the level 4 record stands at a 9.129 by Dead Karma, set on March 30th, 2021, with the run utilizing some very difficult jumps on the stairs in order to squeeze out some extra time. In full game runs of Red Ball, the 2 seconds that the Death Warp saved completely changed the quest for completing the game in under 3 minutes, with every run faster than Rary G's former world record of 304.267 having made use of the strategy. So, that's everything. Yellow Skarmory was the first to perform the level 4 Death Warp, and a clear progression of the level 4 individual level world record followed thereafter. Right?
Level 4, here they come.
Did you hear that? In a video titled Red Ball, The Quest for Axe Perfection, speedrunner Insane Jetman outlined his conquest to try to perfect the level 4 individual level speedrun, hoping to get a perfect beginning and back corner boost off of the falling platform. Jetman goes through an attempt that he unfortunately killed by accident by jumping into the first axe.
No, I thought that was it. Why did I jump again?
But what he didn't notice is that he had actually become the first with recorded video evidence to perform the Death Warp in December of 2020, over 3 months before Skarmory posted his video. He had unwittingly achieved a time of 9.613, over 2 seconds faster than his goal of 11.710, a time which he ended up achieving and displaying at the end of his video. And scrolling below the video, you can see the following comment from Mario7829 posted when the video was released, which read, 607, that flag sound effect. Indeed, the level 4 Death Warp had been right under our noses the entire time. And if we had just paid a bit more attention, we could have figured out everything months earlier, which would have completely altered the world record progression of Red Ball that we see today. Many of the supposed level 4 individual level world records that were mentioned earlier in this video were never world records at all. Insane Jetman had accidentally gotten a 9.613 in December of 2020, a run which wasn't added to the leaderboards until April of 2021, when it was finally noticed that Jetman had actually completed the level via death warping. The vast majority of accidental skip discoveries in speedrunning are noticed right away, as the player almost always sees that something unusual has happened. However, with the case of Insane Jetman, the effect of the glitch was so subtle that it was initially only noticed by just 1 out of the 1,500 people that saw the video. It was only until around 2 weeks after Death Warp had been figured out that people managed to connect the dots. If Yellow Skarmory hadn't posted his first Death Warp on March 25th, 2021, who knows how long it would have been before somebody actually investigated what happened in Jetman's video. The story of Death Warp is quite a curious one, both from a lore and technical standpoint. One that displays an important message to any speedrunner or glitch hunter. Every lead, no matter how small, should always be investigated. There's almost always some kind of robust, technical explanation that can be uncovered. Well, most of the time at least. Thank you for sticking around to the end of the video. I know that this possibly got a bit boring at times due to all of the technical stuff that had to be explained, but I still hope that you enjoyed watching. If you want to see how Death Warp impacted the quest for Sub 3 and Red Ball, make sure to watch my previous video, and make sure to get subscribed for future videos on the subject, because let's just say that things have gotten more interesting. Thanks again for watching, and have a great rest of your day.